I'm here with Matt Muehling, who contacted me, I don't know, a few months ago because he had Polynome and he dug it and he just wanted to get in touch and help me spread the word. And we've been communicating back and forth. And I have to say, it took me, I don't know, a few weeks before I realized that Matt wasn't a drummer. Because I kind of assume people using Polynome are drummers, but Matt is a very accomplished guitarist. So hi, Matt. Thanks for joining me.
Hey.
I have a few questions because we posted a video, or you posted a video of you working on a song with Polynome, and I'm going to put that up so that the people watching this can see a little bit of that song because it's pretty insane. Because I'd asked you how you used Polynome to practice, and you sent me this pattern that was crazy, kind of metric modulation thing with accents in fives over threes and fours and stuff. So I want to ask you about that, but I'm just going to show a little clip so that everybody knows what we're talking about. First I saw of that song Oberbo was the preset that you sent me, and then I saw you practicing just the line with Polynome, and then I went and found a video on YouTube with the full band playing this song. So this band Progger, did you form the band?
So in that video you see like a handful of guitarists, but one of them's playing like a kind of reddish maple Strat. Mm-hmm. He's wearing a hat. That's Carter Arrington. So he and I, and there's two bass players. There's like a white guy playing a Fodera, and then a black guy playing Moog, and then like a couple other basses too. Nick's kind of playing a lot of stuff. Carter and I had a band that like didn't even have a name, and the first guy we asked to play bass with us was this guy, Nick. And we were jamming in Austin for a while. And then the saxophone player, Brian, he moved to Austin and started hanging out. And we were initially just the four of us just getting together at a rehearsal space and just like playing Herbie Hancock tunes, you know. And the drummer, Daniel Watson, he's the drummer that's on Oberbow.
Okay.
He started coming out pretty much immediately, and Brian started bringing original songs in while we were all shedding. Mm-hmm. And one day, like a gig just kind of landed in our lap. Like one of the local jazz venue owners, or bookers, not even an owner, offered Brian a gig, and he was like, you know what, instead of doing this gig under my own name, I'm going to bring this band and we'll do this stuff.
Cool.
And then it was like, I guess this is a band now, and we started calling it Progress after like kind of an inside joke that Brian and I had, and very quickly realized that Progress isn't very Googleable, and so we changed it to, which is if I incorrect, is slang term for like a programmer.
Oh,
so okay. It doesn't even have anything to do with prog music. It was just like we're all into video game music, and it was kind of just like a nerd joke.
Cool. Well, it works. So that particular tune, let's kind of like dive into how that section came about. So who wrote the section? What I'm curious about is who came up with the concept, and where did the concept come from, and then how did that person teach it to everybody else, and are you playing to a click, and just basically how do you go from concept to writing the parts to telling other people the parts, and then to all knowing where you are on the page and being able to get it down?
totally. So I wrote the song in its entirety. Well, actually, Nick kind of. I went over to Nick's house one day when I was still trying to flesh out the whole song, and we just had like a click, and I was playing some of the guitar stuff, and Nick was just like tossing bass lines out there. So like most of the ideas that he had from that one session we did together became kind of the bass work. But the section at the end that we're talking about, that was this thing. Sometimes like you grind away until you get an idea you like, and sometimes those ideas just pop in your head. And I was thinking of, I guess it started out. I had the main song, which was Oba Bow, which is like really fast. It's like 150 BPMs. But then I also had this other thing that was like boom, and it was slower. But I wanted to put them together, and I could hear in my head that they were related somehow, but I couldn't figure out what the relationship was. And I literally just started messing around with, well, okay, is it triplets in groups of four? What is this new? I had for whatever reason, I had a very clear kind of BPM marking for like the two individual tempos.
Okay, so
And I knew they were related, and I had to explore until I found it.
okay, so when you're playing this live, because I know like the bit that you sent me with where it's got groups of five over triplets and then into groups of is that what it is? Is it groups of five?
Yeah, it's groups of five.
And then over the 16th note. So when the rest of the song before that transition, I'm assuming then you're not all thinking in triplets and playing groups of five. You're just at a tempo.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so what happens with the song? Are you playing to a click, and does the click suddenly change to a different tempo, and you just practice that so that you could transition kind of and all feel what the new tempo was, or how does that work?
Yeah, when we did it in the studio, we did everything up to a click right until the point where the downbeat of the new tempo starts. And so, if you watch the video, we're probably pulling it back a little bit once the new tempo starts.
Mm-hmm.
But the kind of implication is there, right, from the moment where the click is still going and we're doing the triplets in groups of five over the click.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I have a lot of trust in Daniel musically. I know that like basically whatever I can cook up, he can do. And when I was showing it to him, I was like, I'm always like floundering for how to explain my more insane ideas. And so it's like, well, it's triplets in groups of five, and everyone's like, okay, what does that sound like? Even though like all of them can do it, everyone's just trying to get to the point. And I'm saying, okay, well, it ends up being on the first quarter note, and then on the triplet right before the third quarter note, and then on the triplet right after the fourth quarter note. Bum, bum, bum.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time around, you just wait 3 beats between that last one and the next one. And then it's bum, 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 right? Then it's right before, right after, and right on,
Mm-hmm.
So we end up talking about the pattern,
Okay.
right? And how the pattern kind of, I don't know what to call those. Like they're kind of like macro patterns. I don't know, like where instead of thinking about, oh, well, I've got these groupings and I've got to like count them, you just think about where they end up hitting against the grid.
Yeah, I think of them as like road marks, like this is where that's going to hit, this is where this is going to hit. And then like if you land on that at this point, then you kind of made it through successfully.
Yeah, totally. And so I had done all the silly nitpicky math work, to make sure it was, because I'm like OCD about some of that stuff. And I wanted to be like, well, we might not play it exactly right, but I want to make sure that like the concept is kind of sound, right?
Yeah.
And so I did all that stuff beforehand. And so when I took it to the guys, I was telling them the pattern, and we shedded the pattern a little bit in the studio. And then just, we went for it. When we track with Progger, we always just end up like press and record and playing the song anywhere from 3 to 6 times, and then we take the best take, and that's, you get what you get.
Yeah.
So we shedded that little section a couple of times, and then just went for the whole song. And when we do it live now, and that's the reason you see me practicing it with Polynome, is just to like kind of be the rock for when we do it live. I mean, I know Daniel's going to handle his thing, but also like I'm the only one playing the 16th note pattern in between the kind of metric implication section, right? So I've got to be able to, like, in my head very easily go from those triplets right back to the 16th notes.
Yeah. So when the song kicks off and you're doing the 16th pattern, are you thinking they're groups of 5/16 at that tempo? Is everybody else?
I used to, but I kind of wanted to get away from that too. I like to know what the concept is to help, like, shortcut, like figuring out the roadmap. And then from there, I just want to shed it till it's internalized, so I don't have to, like.
But technically, the click is on, and you are playing. That's what it is being played, even though you're now just playing it as a melody, and you're not thinking about what it is. You work that out, and But you have the click. What I was curious about was if the click was on, and the fact that.
Oh, sorry. At the beginning of the studio cut. Yeah. The click is on, and it's just Daniel and I, just like there together. But yeah, the click is on, and it's in my ears, and I'm, very much trying to feel those. I mean, because they're going by quick, It's like,
it's
it
cool.
Used to throw me off.
I like it. I one of the things I like with Polynome is using it to program in those things really quickly, so you can just listen to how these sound and get used to the melody of the rhythm. I remember years ago trying to figure out how to play 5/7, like two groupings of, in 16s, 5/7, and I actually programmed it into Cubase, I think, as 3 notes on a piano. So it would be like din 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 din, and then the other one going din 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 din, and I programmed this huge loop of it. And then I would listen to it when I was driving around in the car, just to kind of be able to, like, sing that side of it and then this side of it, and then the two things went together. And so 5/7 became this melody that I just knew how it went, and I could then apply that to the drums if I wanted. And my struggle was always to then make that into something that anybody else wanted to listen to. But it was a fun way of kind of internalizing it.
Yeah, man, and it's like, it's cool to hear you say that, because it's like, oh yeah, other people have this, whatever this super specific form of insanity is that I have, where I'll, like, drive around in the car with a metronome on, just like clapping rhythms and stuff. Like, I'm not even listening to a podcast. I'm just listening to a machine, But yeah, I would do the same thing. And like, I actually didn't have any recording programs to make these loops with, I was talking to my buddy Wayne Salzman, and I was just like, I mean, yeah, I could get a recording program and make loops with, but I'm hoping, there's like a metronome app that's a little bit cheaper than spending $100 on Logic, so I can just make loops. And he said, yeah, man, get Polynome. Polynome can literally do anything.
That's cool.
He named off another one that I did check out, and Polynome just hit me right away.
Yeah.
The way that it's set up, there's 2 metronomes, and you decide exactly what goes in there, and then sky's the limit. I was lit up right out of the gate.
Cool.
It's like, this is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time.
I'm glad you liked it. why don't you said you've got your guitar handy.
I do.
I'd love to see, like, do you ever use Polynomial for practicing just like, I don't know, etudes or things like that as because I'd be curious to know what kind of things guitarists do for practice, and how they might utilize a metronome or the things that Polynomial can do versus, how drummers do.
Yeah. Yeah, I can, let's see, I can get it out and let me set up real quick. A lot of what we end up doing is just, and I feel like I'm squandering it when I do this, but a lot of it's just, regular old four quarter notes, you know.
I mean, will you set up playlists that change speed to work on like increasing your tempo, or just play to a click?
Sometimes I kind of discovered, I guess just by being in cover bands, I found where like my breaking tempo was.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily for triplets, although I'm sure it exists because it has to. Well, for like 16th notes or 32nd notes, I found that like, I guess it was 32nd notes. I found that like my breaking tempo was like 100 BPMs, and I came across that because I was playing tunes like "Ain't Nobody" by Shaka Khan and "Superstition" by Stevie Wonder, and they're kind of sitting right there in that like medium funk land, and because I'm a guitarist, like I want to be able to just like just like turkey all over that thing. And I realized that like triplets felt a little slow, but I couldn't quite achieve 16th notes.
Yeah.
And so like I sat down and like kind of set out to like break some of those walls down. And I found that like if I just get warmed up and then go straight to 100 BPMs and try to like do the thing, it actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
If I notch it down to like 90 and like really get comfortable there, then I can go back up. And I can start like breaking through a little bit.
Yeah. And what kind of, would you be playing specific licks that you might want to use, or just like finger exercises?
Like a little bit of both. I try to like, I guess, can you hear it all? Is that loud enough?
Yeah, that's fine.
A lot of it is just me kind of taking the vocabulary that I've developed and, trying to lay it out. It's funny. I think the thing I find out as a guitarist, that I feel like some guitarists come up against, but kind of just don't worry about, is that like your vocabulary, works at this tempo, and you think you've got it set as long as you can subdivide at the faster tempo. And then they'll go for it at the faster tempo. And we don't realize that like when we're not like picking on a strong beat, we kind of do things to like shift to where those notes that are picked happen on a strong beat.
Okay.
And it's like phrases kind of go off grid where like they will contract to fit like more notes in so we can get that picked like strong beat.
Okay.
And a lot of times that sounds cool. But at some point, like I got to where like I could really feel those moments and it started to drive me bananas, I wanted to have utter control over whatever subdivision I was choosing to do. Even if it's mixed subdivisions, I wanted it to be like on purpose,
So would you, well, do you want to give me like a couple of examples of how you might do that?
Well, like for example, and I'm gonna like kind of get away from some of the vocabulary I was talking about, because this concept comes up a lot with tapping as well, and I think that's where guitarists are most guilty of it. Um, so I watched like a couple of Guthrie Govan videos, and I was like, oh shoot, I don't have to like always tap with my right hand. I can tap with my left hand to start a phrase. Let me see. Let me get like 80 or something. So instead of like, right?
Yeah.
I can start with my left hand. Right? And I think guitarists will do this thing where like we just want, the only way we can feel that subdivision, you know, with all those notes flurrying by, is if we have the strong note be our, you know, our tapped note, you know, so, you know, you'll end up getting these weird phrases where like the notes are kind of speeding up and slowing down so that always happens together. You know what I mean? So it kind of fluctuates between the two. I was like, well, I don't want to do that. You know, I want to keep it consistent and then kind of feel that like over the bar phrasing that ends up happening with a consistent subdivision. So I would do exercises where I would try to keep the subdivision consistent. Right? And at first I tried doing this thing where like I used Polynome to kind of map out where the tapping notes were happening against the grid, you know, so something like that's not exact, but you know what I mean, how it shifts over the grid. And I felt like that yielded actually slower results than I wanted. And then I realized that if I get more comfortable just feeling whichever finger is landing with the click, I get more comfortable with the whole thing.
Yeah, so that there's not one particular... I would find the same thing with drums, that there's a certain place where something will come where it feels just wrong, and that's when the other hand comes in. And it's usually, like you say, over the bar line thing. So if you're doing groups of 5 over the quarter note or whatever, it's usually because we feel things in 4-beat phrases often. Then there's one that comes like it would be, say, on the of the last beat, and you'll pull it back to hit the 1 because it just feels so natural to be going over that bar line. And once you figure out where those are, and you can then make those the important points, you know, to hit, that kind of helps ease you over the thing. It makes me think of learning times tables at school, you know, multiplications, and like there will always be like some that felt really easy and that you just knew, and others that were tricky, but then you'd focus more on the tricky ones, and then they would become the ones that you knew the best.
Right.
So same deal, where you figure out where it is that you are not quite knowing what you're supposed to do, and then you figure it out and focus on it, and then that becomes like one of your strengths almost. Yeah,
and it kind of gave me the idea to like approach, you know, kind of all my over the bar line rhythms from both angles, you know, because in the case of something like Oba Bow, where the accents are important, then like, yeah, of course, kind of the road map marks against the grid are what you want to learn.
Yeah.
You know? But in the case of, you know, like this kind of vocabulary, or even just vocabulary in general, where like, you know, I use a very like mixed kind of technique where like sometimes I'm hybrid picking, sometimes I'm picking with the pick, and sometimes I'm hammering on or pulling off. And those hammer-ons and pull-offs, they're very much quieter than the other two.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's really hard, especially to feel pull-offs on a strong beat, you know, and your ears and your limbs want to realign. to where the strong beat is being picked,
Mm-hmm.
and it throws off my subdivision. And I found that when I approach these over the bar kind of rhythms from both directions, I just overall, like you said, that becomes stronger.
Yeah, and evens out.
And I found that the second kind of approach, where I'm taking care of each finger that lines up with the strong beat, kind of counterintuitively requires me to kind of like reverse engineer my click to where, like, let's see, it's a grouping of 5, right? Mm-hmm. Then I set the click up to do 5s. Like, I'll put the accent in that spot, and then I'm always just checking whichever finger lines up with the accent,
mm-hmm. Right?
Instead of the other method, which is against the grid.
Yeah. Well, I had some ideas for things that I thought might be of interest to guitarists, and one of them was I don't know if you're familiar with Virgil Donati and like Planet X and those kind of.
I hear his name. It's probably a sin for me to like say I'm not hip, but
well,
I'd be if I did.
There's a lot of music that I've heard where you would, back in the day, you'd have like double bass drum meant like constant sixteenths. And
right.
There's a lot of music that I'm starting to hear where it's broken up bass drum patterns and the whole band is playing those broken up groupings. So it will be in a constant rate, for example, 16th notes, but it might be groups of 5s and 3s and 7s and like with gaps in, and everybody's going one of those kind of things.
Yeah, totally.
So one of the things I thought might be a fun thing for guitarists, just for playing along and making practice fun, would be to program in a backbeat and then have randomly assigned bass drum. So you would basically like say, give me a bass drum pattern, and then you would have to like use your ears to hear what it was and try and pick it out. And then when you're bored with that, you could have another one. And it also could be a route to coming up with rhythms for a song if you want some inspiration. I want to thank you for talking to me today. It's been interesting for me, and I hope everybody else who's watching this finds it interesting to get inside the mind of a guitarist. So if anybody wants to check out your band or your personal thing, there's Progger. Is it Progger Music?
Yeah, proggermusic.com. And then, my other band doesn't have a website yet, but you can find it on Facebook. It's McMeta.
Mm-hmm. And do you have anything like do you do tuition, or can people follow you anywhere?
Just my Instagram right now. I gotta redo my website. It's not mobile friendly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just Instagram, and following my 2 bands. McMeta is super crazy rhythm porn, basically. Like we're constantly writing songs in whatever new time signature that we're exploring.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Trying to incorporate like quintuplet shuffle and mm-hmm. a lot of that newfangled stuff.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure that I link to all of that stuff in the comments. And thanks again for talking to me.
Yeah, we should do it again sometime.